All right, hi, we're going to review photosynthesis really quick together. So, to start, the equation for photosynthesis. What does a plant need to photosynthesize and what is produced through photosynthesis? This is the essential thing that you need to know for this unit. So, we have an equation here, a little drawing that for you to look at. We have carbon dioxide that's taken up by the plant, water, and then solar energy. And then we get out glucose, which is a type of sugar, and oxygen. So I'm just going to rewrite that right here. So we have carbon dioxide plus water plus sunlight, and that creates, in the end, we get glucose and oxygen. Remember, this is a chemical reaction. So we're going to take all of these atoms from the reactants, so the carbon dioxide and the water, and we are going to rearrange those atoms to make our glucose and oxygen in the end. So we use the solar energy to break apart the atoms of carbon dioxide and water and rearrange them into glucose and oxygen. So we get this glucose and oxygen from carbon dioxide and water. Photosynthesis is literally transforming matter. It's taking two different types of matter, carbon dioxide molecules and water molecules, and rearranging them to make glucose and oxygen molecules. We're taking the C's, the carbons, the O's, the oxygens, the hydrogens, and more oxygens. And we are looking, when you see over here, we also just have carbons, hydrogen, and oxygens. So carbons, oxygens, hydrogens, carbons, oxygens, hydrogens. That's it. That's where all the matter is coming from. So when we look at a plant, we can ask, where does the matter for that plant come from? All the mass in a plant comes from the two things that go into photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water. That is where the majority of our mass for our plant is going to come from. Yes, there are some nutrients that the plant needs from the soil, but the majority of the thing that a plant needs is carbon dioxide and water. The whole point of photosynthesis is energy. So the plant is able to take sunlight, which is a form of solar energy, and then go through this process of photosynthesis, this chemical reaction, and in the end produce glucose, which is a sugar, and it stores chemical energy, which the plant then can use inside its cells and can create different types of energy that different cells can make. So we are taking solar energy from sunlight, and through photosynthesis, we are converting that into glucose, which is a form of chemical energy that then the plant is able to use. So we take the solar energy, we break apart our carbon dioxide and water, and then we get glucose, which is our main purpose. That's the real reason why the plant goes through photosynthesis. But in the end, we have this oxygen. The oxygen is a byproduct that is not needed by the plant, and so that's why that is basically breathed out or released from the plant. So oxygen is a byproduct of the plant that's not needed. So it is just released. We compare that to glucose, which is not released. Glucose is taken up and used inside the cells. Oxygen is a byproduct and it's released and not used by the plant directly. That's a good thing for us, right? Because we breathe in oxygen. So we need that oxygen. We breathe it in. Plants produce it. We get oxygen in our atmosphere in other ways, but that's the main way we get oxygen in the atmosphere is from plants. So we breathe in that oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide, which is what plants need. It's kind of like a cycle. We're giving plants what they need. They give us what we need. We've done 2 labs this week to prove that this process is really happening inside plants. So let's look at those 2 labs. The first one was the Garden Crest Lab. Okay, so the Garden Crest Lab, we did this all week, right? We planted some seeds, we gave them water, so we gave them the 3 things that they need, right? We gave one of our cups of seeds Water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. We gave them all three of these things. Water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. Then with the other cup, you got to decide which one of these are you going to take out, carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight, and see what happens to your plant. Can it still survive without one of these essential chemicals that photosynthesis needs? Well, this is what we found. Without light, this was what it looked like after our 5-day study. So yes, the plant without light grew taller, but once it started getting leaves, those leaves never turned green, and if you wait long enough, they will start to wilt. The reason why is because these leaves have what's called chlorophyll in them, which is the chemical that is used to basically cause photosynthesis. That's where photosynthesis happens, is in the chlorophyll inside a plant. And that chemical is green. And so if that chemical is not being used or needed by the plant because it's never getting sunlight, the chemical is not produced. Therefore, the plant is not going to be green. It's going to be yellow. So no light means no photosynthesis, means no chlorophyll, means yellow. Versus our light plants are going to get green and grow. Now, we talked about this in class. The without light ones, they were covered with tinfoil. Therefore, they were able to have some more humidity in there. The seeds were able to sprout faster and grow taller because it was more humid than the one with light. But they're yellow and eventually will wilt because they cannot continue to produce energy. Okay, then some people tried water and no water, right? So this one was light, sunlight. We checked that off the list. Second thing on the list is water. So some people put no water, so we got these seeds over here with no water, seeds here with water at the end. The seeds with no water didn't even sprout. You need water to sprout and for the plant to do photosynthesis. So no water, and you don't even get sprouts at all. So that's very interesting. So light, we checked off light. Water. The last thing is carbon dioxide. We tried to test carbon dioxide, but we didn't have the materials we needed, so we weren't able to see what happened when a plant doesn't have carbon dioxide. But we were able to test water and sunlight. In order to test carbon dioxide, we would need a vacuum, which we did not have. Lastly, we did a leaf disc lab. So what we did with this is we took punched out a whole bunch of little discs from a leaf, and then you put it in a syringe. You sucked up inside that syringe a solution that was made up of water and baking soda. And then you basically drowned these little leaf discs. You filled all of the cells that may have had air inside of them with this liquid. And then you dumped those little leaf discs in the bottom of your beaker. Then you put this bright light over the top, and we sat and watched and waited until all of the discs rose. They rose only after they formed little bubbles on the top. So what was going on? How does this prove photosynthesis happened? Well, let's see if we can find out where all the parts of the photosynthesis equation are in this experiment. Okay, where does the water come in? Well, we have water in this end stage in the beaker. Okay, so the water is inside the beaker in the solution. Where did we get the carbon dioxide from? Well, solution beaker. The carbon dioxide actually comes from the baking soda that you mix in with the water. So from the baking soda. So we've got carbon dioxide. Where did we get the sunlight from? The sunlight came from the bright light. So we have all of the things that we need for photosynthesis to happen for those little leaves. And then how do we prove that it really happened? Well, we see evidence. There's little bubbles showing up on the top of the leaves. Those little bubbles are oxygen being released from the plant because it is photosynthesizing. It's taking the water, the carbon dioxide, and using the energy from the sunlight to break apart the water and carbon dioxide atoms, rearrange them, and create oxygen. And it's being released as a byproduct from these cells. So we see the oxygen as bubbles, which cause the leaves to eventually rise to the top. Sorry. Eventually rise to the top. Where do we see glucose? Well, we don't have evidence of glucose in this case because the glucose is going to be absorbed back up by the cells. So there's no evidence of glucose. But we have all of the other parts from our lab that we did that proves that photosynthesis is really happening. So hopefully that clears some things up. Just a review, photosynthesis is carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. and it produces glucose and oxygen. The whole point of this is energy. We are taking solar energy from the sun, and that plant is using it to create chemical energy in the form of glucose. We also have a byproduct of oxygen that the plant doesn't need, so it just releases. And so that means that all of the mass in the plant comes from these two things that are put into photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water. Hopefully that clears up some things for you. Thanks, guys.